Chapter 11, New York, New York. After we left NY, I kept in contact with Mary. I flew back to NY to be with her more than 5 times after the awards. We had chemistry and the conversation was good. If I didn't love my girl so much, we would have really been on something serious. The next time I flew into New York, my flight stopped for a layover before I got to Rochester. I was flying in to work with Devontae Swing of Jodeci. When she found out that I was at the airport, she came and picked me up. She wanted to go and get something to eat and spend some time with me before I left. I ended up missing my flight, but that was part of her plan. She had already booked a room. When we got to the room, she was drunk as hell. That was another reason I couldn't get with her on some real shit. Soon as we hit the room, she ran and got in the shower. When she was done showering, she came out of the bathroom with nothing on but a hotel shower robe. She had a glass of champagne in her hand and the bottle under her arm. She got in the bed and proceeded to go down on me. I was laid back on the bed, smoking the good green that she had gotten for me. She was stroking me with her mouth while I smoked. Boy, I was hooked. She told me that even though she was on her period, she still wanted to have sex. Initially, I was grossed out, but I smashed that ass anyway. It was messy and there was blood everywhere. It looked like a scene from Murder Was the Case. It was so bad that me and Bloody Mary ended up changing rooms. In the morning, she woke up and arranged for a car service to pick me up so that I could go to Rochester to work with Devontae. When I got there, Devontae sent some of his people to the airport to pick me up. When we got to the studio, Devontae was sitting at the keyboard playing. He got up and ran over to me and gave me a hug and said, "Nigga, welcome to the basement." There, he introduced me to Missy Elliott and her group Sista, and to Static and his group Playa, Timbaland and Magoo and Genuine. We listened to a lot of music that night and even chilled for a minute. After the session, I took a town car and checked in at the hotel. When I woke up, I wanted to go to the mall. I still had about $5,000 to $6,000 left from what Suge had given me. I called up Genuine to show me where the mall was. We shopped our asses off. We spent everything but $60. It was a good thing that Suge called to check on me. He would always ask me if I had money. I told him that I did. When he asked how much, I had to hurry up and make up a number because I hated asking him outright for money. I told him I had like 2 Terran bucks. He clicked over on the office phone and told Roy, his assistant, to get 5 Tattogay over to me. Within the hour, I was standing at Western Union picking up the money. We had to put some in other people's names because I had received more than the allowed amount. Back at the studio, Devontae played a song called Slip and Slide and another song called It's All About You. An hour later, we were recording and Genuine and I were both laying backgrounds for the song. It took me about 4 days to record the lead vocals. By that time, Genuine and I had become friends. We bonded like brothers. Even when I went back home, we made sure we kept in touch with each other. We would always keep each other encouraged. I remember when some things popped off for him and he didn't know what move to make, we prayed together. I told him, after we prayed, that when you get these types of opportunities, you have to respond to them the right way, especially if where you are and what you are doing isn't working. I wanted the music to happen for him. I really loved this dude. He was one of the realest people I had met. He came to LA a couple of times and I brought him to the studio to give him a little taste of Death Row and how we kicked it. The next time that I saw him was when his video premiered. I was so happy for him. Even though he was separating from Devontae, I still celebrated him. After all the praying and tears, he was finally where he wanted to be, and the world was going crazy over him. When I returned to LA, I went directly to Suge's house. I wanted to play the songs for him. He immediately fell in love with Slip and Slide. Every time we got together and talked about the song or the video, he would say, "You've got to do this on the water, in the ocean." He'd ask me, "Can you walk on water?" Chapter 12, Mother's Day Without Her. Needless to say, losing my mother wasn't something I could get over. It was tough to deal with the loss. So when I got the call from Suge to be a part of what would become an annual Mother's Day event, I was a bit apprehensive. But when Suge called, I answered. We were going to perform and feed 1,000 women and children at the Beverly Hills Hilton Ballroom. KC and JoJo, the Isley brothers, Michelle, Jewel, and I were scheduled to perform. With the circumstances being what they were, I sang as much as I could. It was my very first Mother's Day without my mom. I was feeling sad, but I wanted to do it for my mother, and I did just that. But immediately after I performed, I went backstage and cried my head off. I was excited to be a part of a show that was giving back. It was a good thing to see Suge taking care of people he didn't even know. I mean, it was a red carpet event, and there were real stars performing. Some of the families were picked up by limos. Everyone that came left with a small Death Row medallion, and all of the mothers were given elaborate gift baskets. After the show was done, we went back to the Peninsula Hotel and hung out with all of the performing artists. We chilled and drank and drank and chilled all night. I couldn't believe that I was hanging with the Isleys and Kasai and JoJo. I mean, these were the people I grew up listening to. What was once a lofty childhood dream was now reality. It was Death Row that made it happen, and I was immensely grateful. Hanging out with my childhood idols was the highlight of the event, but little did I know, there were more surprises to come. Suge walked into my room and threw a black box at me. "Check this out, DB, and tell me if you like it," he said. I opened the box to see a large gold chain and a medallion. When I removed the cover from the medallion, it read Danny with the boy symbol under it. The chain looked as if it had millions of diamonds in it. I was so thrilled when I saw the piece. Shug just walked away smiling. He enjoyed giving gifts. 2 days later, Shug called me to his office. I took my time because Shug was known to show up 5 hours late. When I got there, I was 3 hours late and Shug still hadn't made it to the office. I waited there until I grew tired. Just as I was about to leave, somebody got off the elevator and said Shug was on his way up. We talked for about 30 minutes before Shug asked me to walk down with him to go see my car. I jumped up immediately. When we got on the elevator, all I could do was watch with anticipation as the numbers on the elevator got lower. When the doors opened, I turned the corner to see my new, red, two-door car. I didn't know what kind of car it was. All I knew was that it was a two-door drop-top. Come to find out, it was a Nissan, but it didn't matter what kind of car it was. Shug had customized the black interior with red accents. My name was embroidered on each of the floor mats, Danny on the driver's side and Boy on the passenger side. I quickly jumped into the car and turned up the radio. I couldn't believe my life. Shug gave me a hug, got in his car, and drove off. I could tell that he was just as happy as I was. I was singing thank you as Shug rode off. I hit the 101 for about an hour, bumping oldies before I went to the crib and grabbed my girl. We rode all night. Chapter 13. From Prison to Death Row. Early one morning, Shug called and asked me to meet him at the airport in Van Nuys. He told me to be there in an hour. I made sure that I got there before that hour was up. I only took a small overnight bag with me. He didn't tell me where we were going, and I didn't ask. When we boarded the jet, we flew about 5 hours before we landed in New York. After we landed, we jumped into a late model limousine. We drove for several hours before we finally stopped at a restaurant near Rikers Island. Shug sent me inside to get some food while he took a meeting at the prison. I sat in that restaurant nearly 2 hours before he returned. When he re-emerged, the limousine driver took us back to the city. He didn't directly communicate the details of the meeting, but I overheard him talking on the phone. He was making plans to bring Tupac on board. He had been with Interscope, but when he went to prison, many in the industry gave up on him. Shug knew that Tupac was special, and he was determined to sign him to death row. He went back to visit Tupac a few more times before his release. On the day of his release, I sat at the same restaurant waiting for Shug to return, but there was no indication that this visit was any different from the others. It wasn't until the limo pulled up that I realized that Pac had been released. It was October of 1995. Shug, David Kenner, Pac, and I were on our way back to California. While we rode, Pac was flowing verses, smoking and drinking. Shug had me singing oldies like he always did. This time, Pac joined in. He kept requesting songs and I kept singing. Even when I didn't know the song, I always knew the chorus. When we finally arrived at the small private airport, we pulled right up to the steps of a luxury jet. I had sung just about all of the old school songs I knew. As the stewardess waited at the top of the stairs, the driver unloaded our luggage. As soon as I got on the plane, I could see women everywhere. Some were half naked with their breasts hanging out. The others had nothing on but thongs or boy shorts. It was one of the best flights I had ever been on. The girls danced and we drank and smoked all the way to Los Angeles. I was truly enjoying flying the friendly skies. It was on that trip that I received my membership to the Mile High Club. "Welcome to the City of Stars," the captain said as we prepared to land. By the time we arrived, we couldn't wait to get off that long-ass flight. You could see the look of excitement that Pac had on his face. It was obvious that he was happy to be out. When we got to the gate, the limos were waiting to pick us up. I got in a town car and went to the crib to see my girl. Once I checked her, showered, and got dressed, I headed to the studio. Everybody was there waiting to see Pac, but he hadn't arrived. After several hours, I saw Kelvin Lewis running to the back door. As soon as Pac got out of the limo, he took about 2 steps and then, bam, he fell straight on his face. He had passed out, and they were putting water on his face, trying to get him to come to. Between the flight and whatever else he did in between, he had overdone himself. It took about 30 minutes before they could get Pac up on his feet. Once he was able to walk on his own, he went right into the studio and started listening to tracks and writing. After that day, you could barely get him to do anything else. If anyone wanted to talk to Pac or interview him, they had to come to Can-Am, because that's where he was working. This was the time when a lot of other celebrities came around death row. I had seen a lot of them at the red carpet events, but never in our studio. I saw artists like Queen Latifah, Treach, and E40. Pac's crew was called the Outlaws. They were like his protégés. He was grooming them, preparing them for the industry. They were with him every day. To be in Pac's presence was like sitting in a classroom, and the Outlaws were always in attendance. They were on point and had his back as much as he had theirs. I could appreciate their loyalty and truly admired them. Pac had a constant stream of visitors after he was released. There were magazines and other media, and even other artists in the industry. Faith was one of the first to show up with gifts. When she pulled up in her limo, she was wearing a hooded jogging suit, a hat, and sunglasses. I guess she was trying to move around incognito, but there was no hiding that bright blonde hair. I was laying in Shug's office watching her on the camera. She had about 5 runners bringing out boxes from her trunk. They were full of expensive clothes and items from Louis Vuitton, and they were all for Pac. At that time, Faith was still married to Biggie, and she had just dropped about 40 grand on Pac. That's why I say that the whole East Coast versus West Coast shit had a lot to do with women. We were all in the studio chilling when Pac got on the mic to record Wonder Why They Call You Bitch. She went into the booth and laid the background vocals and ad-libs. When we headed back to the hotel, Faith stayed at the studio with Pac. The song was fire, but her vocals couldn't be used. Her record label would not approve her appearance due to the beef that Biggie and Pac had going on. People were tripping over the fact that Biggie's wife was on Pac's shit. When she was there, she stayed right under Pac. When he left, she left with him. Faith came around a lot, and it appeared that she and Pac were good friends from the outside looking in, but us on the inside knew that they had something more than that, something intimate. It wasn't a secret that she and Pac were fucking. Chapter 14, All Eyes on Him. Pac was glowing. He was living the life of the rich and famous for the first time. Each day, things got better for him. Hype was being built up about him being released from prison and signing to death row. Before Pac came to death row, he wasn't wearing a lot of jewelry, but once he signed, Suge started designing his pieces. This was a big deal because it was a sign that he was in. There was a clear difference between Pac's swag in the Dear Mama video and the ones that followed. Before long, Suge presented Pac with a car just like he did me, but this time, instead of a red 2-door drop-top Nissan, it was a black drop-top Benz with a red bow around it. Pac was elated. As nice as it was to have Pac around, it also seemed to slow down production of my own record. I felt like Suge was putting my project on the back burner. Everything was about Pac and his album. Perhaps it was because I was his son that he felt that he could easily put my project on hold, but I wasn't the only one that felt like they were being sidelined. There was always someone who took priority over the other artists. Before Pac, there was Snoop. It was the nature of the beast. While people had their different feelings about things, they couldn't deny the spirit Pac had. He was all about bringing people together. He tried to make sure everyone was involved. Sometimes I would be in my room recording, and Pac would come in. "Danny boy, come pop something on this track. Let me see what you come up with," he would say. This is how songs like What's Your Phone Number, Picture Me Rollin', Heaven Ain't Hard to Find, I Ain't Mad at Cha, and many more of our collaborations came to be. Pac helped everyone's work ethic become better. He was constantly laying hit after hit. We knew that when we came out with something, we had to match his quality. Everybody was trying to show Suge that they were stars. It became a friendly competition because we really couldn't hate on Pac. He was the shit and everybody knew it. If you were a part of Death Row, you were going to be involved with what Pac was doing, some kind of way. Pac knew that the spotlight was on him, but I'm so grateful he let us shine with him. Suge's artist roster proved that he was unstoppable, and he took care of us. We all had nice cars, the finest jewelry, and women at our disposal. But no matter how hard we played, we worked even harder. Making hits at Can-Am Studios was so fulfilling that it didn't feel like work. Me, Suge, and Pac were always together, and even our ladies rolled together. I remember us chilling at the Beverly Hills Hotel with Faith, Misa, and Mary J. We were cool like that, but when it was time to work, we were on it. Pac always got to the studio very early in the morning, and sometimes wouldn't come out until the next day. Dude had a strong work ethic, and it was paying off. He had all of the attention. Everything was revolving around him. Most of that time, Suge maintained that my record was coming out next, but before long, he would change his tune. It wasn't for lack of me trying. I would be recording in Studio A while Pac was recording in Studio B. It wasn't Pac's fault, though. I was glad that he was there. Every time Pac needed vocals, he would come in and put me on the track. I would be running back and forth between my room and Pac's room. I was singing on everything. Some of the stuff we did I thought wouldn't fly, but to my surprise, the world loved it. One night we were in the studio recording, and the secretaries were all up on top of the tables dancing and stripping. We were drinking, and Pac was talking shit on the mic. Pac called me into the booth, and we went off on this beat from one of Morris Day's songs. We took it and made it our own. That's how we came up with What's Your Phone Number. It was a crazy session. We drank and smoked all night. I think this was the longest song we recorded on the All Eyes on Me album. We recorded our vocals and then kept the mic on in the room and let it record for hours. Everything on the record was organic and real. There was audio of Pac talking shit to the girls, ad-libbing and laughing. It was all live. We recorded right into the early morning. That same week, we were scheduled to have a photo shoot with Vibe magazine. Pac, Suge, and Snoop were on the cover. The rest of the artists came in one by one and had their photos taken. We all had on black shirts. I didn't like the idea of wearing the same shirts. I thought the idea was corny, but once I saw the layout, I changed my mind. Any doubts I had went away real fast. Pac was taking Death Row to another level, and we all were going with him. Dr. Dre was the co-owner of Death Row at this time, but he was rarely present. It was hard to get him to come in on a session. It didn't matter to him that you were an artist on the same label. That guy wasn't working with you unless he wanted to. His head was in production, and for most of us, he wasn't accessible. He'd only work with a certain type of artist. Out of all the years I was on the label, I may have been in the same studio with him once or twice. Pac was always tripping to Suge about Dre. He felt that Dre wasn't really down with Death Row, and that he was distant with everyone. It just took too much to get Dre in the studio. Suge was saying that Dre was pissed because he chose to put California Love on Pac's All Eyes on Me album. For that, and probably other reasons, Suge and Dre's relationship was deteriorating. They just couldn't see eye to eye. They could have also been having a little tiff because Suge was creeping with Michelle, Dre's girlfriend and baby mama. Suge could be messy at times, like saying that Dre was gay and that he caught him in bed with a man. I think Dre was over that bullshit. It wasn't long before Dre left Death Row. He left the label without asking for a dime. He had partnership in Death Row. He owned a percentage. What that percentage was, but he still had his sound. If a record was whack, Dre could turn it into a hit. He had to start from the bottom again. Things started off kind of shaky for him in the beginning, but he got it together. In no time, he introduced the world to Eminem. Eminem brought 50 Cent to the table, and 50 brought G-Unit. After Dre left Death Row, Pac started making diss albums toward him. With Pac and Suge being like brothers, they did everything together. If Pac had a problem, Suge adopted the problem and vice versa. Chapter 15, All Eyes on Me Tour. When we left California for a couple of spot dates, our first stop was Cleveland, Ohio. Just about all of the artists on the